r/AskReddit. Lawyers of Reddit, what was your oh shit moment in court? When I was in college, I was a bailiff. Guy is on trial for murder. First witness testified that she saw the defendant shoot the victim. Second witness states the same. Police officer testimony is that he arrived at the scene and defendant was there holding the gun. Coroner testimony is that the first bullet hit the victim in the arm, the second bullet hit the victim in the torso and the third bullet hit the victim in the heart, which was the fatal shot. Defendant yells out, "See, that proves that I didn't kill him. I only shot the motherfucker twice." Not mine but my boss's one. She had to defend a small-time delinquent as duty solicitor. Before going to court he asked her what he should do. She explained to him if he was cooperative and truthful his sentence would be milder. After hearing the case the judge asked him if he wanted to add something. He got up and explained to the judge, "My counsel told me to be truthful, so I wanted to tell you that I not only did the robbery I'm being heard for but also several others in the region." He continued to admit to several robberies that had been unsolved yet, and everyone, even the state attorney, were facepalming. Literally the first thing I ever did was just a law student intern. Guy has a legit defense on a drug possession case. Drugs found in a jacket. Guy wasn't wearing jacket. They were going to have a very difficult time proving the jacket belonged to my guy. Had a long meeting with client. Explained everything. Client was excited. Day of the preliminary hearing, guy shows up and sits down directly in front of the officer who arrested him. While wearing the jacket in question, the exact same jacket we were going to say they couldn't prove belonged to him. Not me but my former law partner. She was in court representing a client, I think in a hearing for a restraining order against her soon-to-be ex-husband. Our client was telling the judge that when they met to exchange the children for visitation, the ex had kicked her. He immediately angrily shouted, "She can't prove it. I didn't leave a mark." Thanks, buddy. Probably the funniest one I ever came across happened to a colleague. We were prosecutors then. 18-year-old defendant applying for bail. He needed a residential address and got his dad to show up at court to confirm that the family home was available to him. Defense lawyer gets old dad to confirm that son can stay at family home. Dad says yes. My fellow prosecutor gets up and asks dad, "Do you really want him home?" Dad goes off the deep end. Backquote, "Jesus. The grief he's brought me and his mother out all hours. Taking drugs, hiding stolen property in the garage, all night parties. I'm on antidepressants and the wife's had a nervous breakdown." Dad goes off on one for 5 solid minutes. As the defendant gets taken back to the cells, he calls out, backquote, "Thanks dad. I owe you one." I was at a hearing arguing that my client was wrongfully terminated because the employer failed to abide by the proper procedures. During the hearing, a witness for the employer tried to offer documents that were fraudulently altered in order to make it look like the proper procedure was followed. I noticed the alteration. Opposing counsel quickly got that witness out of the room, and after a quick adjournment, my client got a large settlement. Opposing counsel was a nightmare. Everything late. His work was extremely subpar, and so forth. Accused me of lying multiple times when he had dropped the ball. During another hearing in which he did another dumb move, judge says, "I'm glad you are the last case on the call, and all of the other attorneys have left the room, so they aren't here to hear me say that you are a terrible attorney." Medical malpractice defense lawyer here representing hospital/doctors. This was not my oh shit moment, but plaintiff's oh shit moment. For context, usually at trial, both plaintiff and defendant will have an expert physician testify as to their opinion to whether the doctor/hospital performed everything correctly. I thoroughly researched plaintiff's expert, who was an ob/gyn, baby delivery, and found out he had been suspended a number of times for his own botched deliveries and giving incorrect medical testimony to help plaintiff's cases. During the actual day of trial, turns out he was not licensed to practice medicine independently without supervision from another physician, and he was 1 year into his 3-year suspension. Plaintiff's lawyers had no idea about their own expert's background and they just sat there with a blank. Not in court but a deposition. Plaintiff in a sexual harassment case that was suspected to be paid role play with her boss. kept a very detailed sex diary on her work computer. At one point she was asked to read from the diary for the record and asked if she had written the accounts and if they were true. She was asked at several points if she wanted her new husband to leave the room while she did this, but declined. Let's just say it was extremely kinky. She confirmed it was true, and the only mention of her now husband was that he was boring in bed, but she was going to marry him because she couldn't get her first, second, or third choice. He ended up leaving on his own after she read that part out and confirmed it was him she was writing about. Not a lawyer, but I witnessed my ex-wife try to argue with a judge that she couldn't be accused of kidnapping our daughter because our daughter was legally emancipated. Not a spoiler, she wasn't at the time of the kidnapping. My ex had legal statutes written on small sheets of paper she had torn out of books in the jail library, and she kept arguing with the judge after being told that none of it mattered. After the 5th time my ex interrupted the judge with her nonsense, the judge slammed her hands down, stood up, leaned over her bench, and told my ex that she had been a juvenile court judge for 20 years and was well aware of the statutes. If she interrupted one more time then she would be held in contempt and spend several months more in jail. My lawyer held up his folder in front of his face to hide his grin during this exchange. I walked out with full legal and physical custody of my daughter, court supervised visitation for my ex, and a full restraining order. Not exactly in court, but I was defending a juvenile robbery case where there was very little evidence. There was supposed to be 2 guys, but they only picked up this one kid. He had no stolen property on him. He was picked up like outside his own house, wearing different clothes than the victim had initially said. This kid was on the honor roll at school. His family seemed kind and were involved. He wrote poetry and played instruments. I actually believed it was a legit mistaken identity case. I went to meet with one of the kid's mentors for a character reference, and he exactly matched the description of the other robber. I was the dumbass that almost screwed myself. I had 2 charges in 2 different courts. I accepted the first plea, which almost always carries probation, but my plea didn't have that condition. When it came time to accept the second plea, the prosecutor didn't include probation because she assumed my first charge put me on probation. She said as much to the judge, and me being a big dummy almost corrected her. My lawyer grabbed my shoulder and, I shit you not, told me to shut the fuck up. She doesn't know. Never ask a question to which you don't know the answer. Prosecutor suggested to me client that the canned goods he had burgled were to be used to trade for drugs. Me thinking the idea ludicrous, asked my client whether he has ever traded food for drugs, to which he replied that he once exchanged a frozen chicken for heroin. Needless to say, I didn't win that one. Not a lawyer, but was working at the jail when an inmate came back from court and immediately went on suicide watch. Apparently he was up for a plea deal and was only looking at 6 months, but started questioning some of the facts, which let in a ton of previously denied evidence. This new evidence linked him to 6 B&Es and rapes. He walked out of court facing a 99-year sentence, which he was certain to get, all because he opened his mouth. Edit. The lawyers were arguing over a pair of the victim's panties. He apparently chimed in with something he shouldn't have known. That brought in evidence that was previously inadmissible to not only this case, but 5 other burglary/rapes. Evidence, which by the transport officer's words, good enough to metaphorically fuck him for 100. I was just interning in court during law school, but I'm a lawyer now. Fight in a club. Someone had broken someone else's jaw and had 6 friends with him that insisted he had been identified wrongly because he never had a beard and the victim said he had a beard. They used a very specific phrasing to the tune of "my friend doesn't have facial hair because he is a professional in the food industry and it would go against the regulations." After 3 of the witnesses had repeated the same exact phrasing, the judge stopped one to ask if he knew what a couple of the terms in that line meant, and the witness couldn't explain it. Defense lawyer got busted for instructing the witnesses. She'd also gotten the defendant to reject a plea deal that exchanged prison time for a fine and community service. Lawyer here. I had a pre-trial conference at 9 AM at a court about 2 hours away. So I wake my ass up super early to drive in shitty weather to the conference. I get there, and we are waiting for the other, in town, attorney. All the while I'm grumbling to myself about how I'm from out of town and I can still make it on time. Finally the court calls the other attorney's office, and gets a receptionist who tells us through tears that other attorney passed away the night before. Needless to say I was just happy to still be alive, and we rescheduled for a few months later.